Alright, so today we're going to be lowering the Miata, but it's probably not how you think it's going to be lowered. We're not using coilovers, lowering springs, or even cutting the springs. We're going to be using those cheap, ghetto eBay coil sleeves. Now, these are the eBay coilover sleeves, and they're pretty much like lowering springs, except they are a coil type spring and they have these adjustable spring perches. But how they work is they just slide over your shock and it just sort of converts it to a coilover essentially. And it will be right height adjustable and everything, but the shocks will require some modification to make these work. I need to get rid of this ring and just some other things like that, but overall it's a simple process and it should work out great. So you might be wondering, why am I using these instead of just saving up a little bit and buying some eBay coilovers? And it's because I've always seen these, I've always been curious about them. They're just so cheap, but they're actually cheaper than lowering springs, and I was just wondering if they were actually decent and usable. A lot of people would just think of them as those things people throw in their Hondas with their stock trucks and just bounce everywhere, but I think they might actually be decent. And I looked it up, and a bunch of people will use these on Miatas with some Bilsteins or Conies, and it'll make for a really dialed setup. And I have some aftermarket shocks that came with the car, so I figured I would throw them on there, see how they work. I'm one of those people who don't really look up much stuff. If I'm curious about something, I'll just do it and see if I like it or not. Same thing with like welded diffs and everything. So I'm just gonna give it a shot. I think it will make the car handle better and will ride lower, which is what I like. So I'm gonna try it out and see how it works. But before I do any work, I'm just going to go over the car so we can get a little before and after. Now obviously I painted the wheels black. I did it real quickly and it didn't even mask. I got some free tire shine here, but as you can see, there's a bunch of wheel gap, especially in the front. The back isn't as bad, but I actually lowered this side, so it's sitting lower here than on the other side, so it was actually a lot worse. And once I lower the other side, it should drop the car even more. So I'm really excited to see how it sits, but overall I think it'll come out decent enough. But now I will move the E36 out of the way, pull the Miata in the garage, and finally get started. Now I'm going to start by working on the rear side that I have not done yet, and I'm actually just going to pull the car back out of the garage. I pulled it in here just because it's where all my tools are, it's where the mechanic pit is and everything, but it's getting really crowded in here. I've just been working on countless cars and projects and haven't had time to clean, so I'm just going to pull it out. I figure it's a nice day and it'll be a nice change to work in the driveway for once, and we'll avoid contributing to this mess. Alright, so I got everything taken apart, and I just want to show you all the difference between the stock stuff and the new stuff that I'm putting in. As you can see, the rear spring is absolutely huge and the eBay one is literally half the size. Now this compresses a lot more, so it's probably realistically only a few inches smaller, but it should make for a good drop. And here is the stock shock, which you can see the bump stop has completely just shredded itself to pieces. And this is the stock bump stop, which I'm going to be using a KYB setup, which should be a lot nicer. And I do have to modify this. I just have to quickly grind this little ring off so the spring can set all the way down to here. But I'll go ahead and start installing the new suspension, get everything put together, and then we'll throw it in the car. Alright, so I finished up the rear and it's all done. Now I set the springs as low as they would go, and it dropped the car quite a bit. It got rid of pretty much all the wheel gap, which before it genuinely looked pretty much exactly like the front, like 3 inches of wheel gap. And it's pretty much gone now, so I'm really happy about that. And just by pushing on the car, you can tell it's a lot stiffer, but it still has give. If any of you have ever like felt cut springs, like just by pushing on the car or anything like that, you'll know there's like no suspension travel and it's just really stiff. But this feels good, and already I'm feeling pretty confident about how it's going to handle. But that's all I'm going to do today. I'm really tired. I had a long day of class, so I'm just going to pick up tomorrow and do the fronts. So last night I got a little impatient and went ahead and did this side of the car. So all that is left to do is just quickly do this side and the car will be completely done. Now the process is pretty much the same between the back and the front. There's a few small things that are a little different, but overall it'll be the same, so it should not take long. And the front shocks have actually already been installed on the car. I believe they were probably installed about a year or so ago. The previous owner probably just installed them and was just over it and didn't do the back, so that's why the backs were never put in. But now I'm going to go ahead and get started and hopefully knock this out pretty quick. Alright, so I finished everything up with the car. It took a while, but it's all done. And I'm just going to drive the car down the road, let the suspension settle and everything, and then we'll see how it looks, see how much it dropped the car. Alright, so I drove the car around, got the suspension to settle and everything, and actually almost got hit by 2 different cars on the way here, which was only like a mile drive, and I guess it's just because the Miata is so small. But moving on, we'll just quickly, I will show you the car and we'll see how much it lowered it, just so you can get an idea. So I'll just quickly go over how the car is sitting. As you can see, I got rid of all the wheel gap, which it had about probably 2.5 to 3 inches of wheel gap before, so it lowered the car quite a bit. But the car still isn't too low. It's really drivable, and it actually added some camber, especially in the back, which normally with a drift car you want little to no camber, but this car has no power, so that camber is just going to help it out a little bit. The spin tires in the dry, the car is really weak. But overall, I'm really happy, and I could actually lower the car even more if I wanted to, just by removing one of the collars on the spring perch, and that would drop it probably about a little under ½ an inch more, which I might do in the coming days. But that's how the Miata sits, and I actually thought I was going to lower it a lot more than that, but I'm not complaining. I only paid $50 for those sleeves, got the shocks for free, so you cannot beat that. And I would recommend them if you're just on a real tight budget and wanted to drop the car, but really I would say save and get coilovers. I'm eventually going to get coilovers for the car, but this is something I just wanted to try out, see how they work, and do for the time being, which I'm pretty happy with the end result. Now next for the car, I'm going to be doing something exhaust wise. I'm not quite sure yet. I really do not like the way 4-cylinders sound, so I'm kind of leaning to a stock muffler and just doing a cat delete. I think it'll sound decent. I'll just make it a little louder and it'll still look stock, and I can just go around drifting, not really draw attention to me because the car is not as loud. The E36 is just terrible. But stay tuned for that. As always, if you enjoyed the video, just drop a like, and until then guys.